So this is the back end of the session. My kind of brains trust, I wanted to get them to talk a little bit about what got them over the hump into maybe a little bit more comfortably flying longer distances. First up is Joe.
So this one and this one, really struggling mentally just to leave the hill. So just, what you normally do is you go to the hill, you float about, you can see your car down there, you float about and then you land and you get back in your car and you go home. And the transition from doing that to doing something like this is really quite massive. This bit here took, 2 minutes or something. It wasn't very long. And that was basically just a big sled ride. But that was...
So the top left one is Dentdale.
That's Brantside.
Brantside. So you're going along Great Knapbury.
Yeah, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I think from this point here I was like, oh God, what's going on? And then I landed. I think Rosie, you landed. Oh, it's Rosie not here.
She got.
She landed just here with me as well, actually. So I didn't feel too bad about that. But just leaving the hill, really hard.
There's a point to be made here, and that we've chatted, and I know Joseph's a fan of this, Ed's NCS tasks, and that is actually one of, it's not an NCS task, it's one of his Dale's Flying Challenges tasks. Okay, yeah. And it's a lovely little flight, especially if you've got somebody to pick you up.
Yeah, the problem with landing there and trying to get back to there is it's actually, well, it's physically not very far, it's actually quite a difficult retrieve. Similar story on this one, and so Pete asked us to...
Dodd fell?
Yeah. Pete asked us to look at our historic flights, and one habit I've got into is writing on the forum flight logs. So it's actually quite easy for me to find the flight log for this flight, because I can find the date, I can look in the forum, flight logs forum, search for my name, scroll to the right page that's got the right date on and found it quite easily. And what I'd done this day is I'd left my car in Hawes, hitchhiked up to the hill, so that then I wasn't looking down on my car was in Hawes. So no matter what happened, I was going to have to fly. Even if I just ended up doing this kind of thing again, I had to do that, otherwise I was going to actually be stuck on Dodd trying to get back to Hawes. So that was a good thing. And then the actual flight, this was great because I'd actually, like I said earlier, I'd gone from going over the back to going over the back and catching something, and again, and then I got into Great Whernside and it kind of fell apart. And then I had a really quite long walk out where I landed there. I think it took me a couple of hours or something, maybe more, to walk out. But I was absolutely buzzing. It was great. And then this one, quite similar to the one that Pete was talking about before, Windbank and out across the North Yorkshire Moors. This was through the middle of the Matses. Basically, a bit like Jake was saying as well, that tiny improvement, all of a sudden the scale has gone from, that, almost nothing, to something quite big. This is about 80 odd kilometres. And this is on the B wing, so I was quite pleased with that. This bit here through the middle of the Matses actually thermaled up. It's quite low and actually thermaled up between the middle of them, which was a bit interesting. But it worked. And then got into the North Yorkshire Moors, but then it all fell apart. And then I got a really great retrieve. I got a retrieve from here in a convertible car, drove me down to the main road, dropped me on a corner, a policeman picked me up, like a police IT person, drove me all the way to the train station, and then I was home. From landing, I was back home in Baildon, like within a couple of hours or something. It was amazing. And that's it really, I can't really think what else to say.
So what was the change where you were able to tie many more climbs together in that later flight than in the earlier two?
So the big difference between these two and this one is that this one was with other people. This one I was with Pete Darwood and two other people that I can't remember. James Goldsborough, who actually was with me right up till quite close to the end.
Nick Payne as well.
And you went off with somebody else and you were faster, because me and Jim were on B wings and you guys kind of accelerated around about this point. I think you went off into the distance, but it was gaggle flying because I didn't really know what was going on here. I was just following these guys forward. Yeah, because I remember peeping on the radio, like, oh, we need to worry about this airspace. So I'm like, what? Airspace? You know, I mean, this is it. Is my mental capacity in this kind of flight is I'm not worried about airspace in the Dales. I mean, another flight that isn't up here is my first flight out of the Dales and landing at Harrogate. It was about 50k, and it was the first time airspace had actually come up on my XC track. And also, I unfortunately had XC track. For some reason, I had it configured so that it kept the entire track log in the screen. So the further I went, the more zoomed out it got. So I got to the 50k point, and all I could see was like this tiny few pixels of airspace, and me, I had no idea how close I was. Turns out I was miles away. So, yeah. Well.
Thank you. Jake, 2006.
Seems like yesterday.
What do you remember from 2006? You've got 4 flights there to choose from. You got Windbank to past Hexham. You got Weather to Helmsley. It looks like.
Oh yeah, blue.
In blue.
Yeah.
And then you got 2 from either Dodd or Weather going down south of Harrogate.
Yeah.
But they're 2006, so maybe only 3 years into flying 100 days.
Yeah, I think that was the first year that I actually got together with more than. So I just used to fly with Chris Downton basically before then, just me and him mostly. And that was the first year I think we hooked up with some of the North Yorks guys, Snarty and a few other people. Dean was out a lot that year actually. So we actually tried to be a bit more professional in trying to get out a bit more, all on the same hill at the same time. So that was a big difference. So yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think by then I'd probably got 500 or 600 hours under my belt. So I think an important thing to do. I think you'll find your performance improves massively once you can thermal to base without concentrating on thermaling. So you're thinking strategically rather than about your glider control. So once you've got a certain amount of airtime and you're doing that maybe 50 hours or more a year, you just get in the swing of it. So you can think about the clouds and the strategy and where you're going to go and that kind of thing. So that for me was a big learning point for me. My performance improved once I could control the glider and under all situations in thermals and think about, what was happening in front of me, what other gliders are doing, what my plan is, what the airspace is doing. Yeah, I think fundamentally that was what changed with me for probably that year.
Yeah. So this is a corridor.
Yeah.
That is actually, it's not connected to the ground. So maybe here. This section here is at 6,500 feet, and then it goes down to 5,500, and it steps down.
Yeah.
Can I ask, when you're flying near airspace, then, are you always relying on your instruments, or is that something you were talking about having a mental map? Would you know that before if your instrument gone, if your batteries have gone or whatever?
So for Feldham and Bellaby, I kind of know where on the ground I need to avoid. Being above. For Leeds Bradford, and for here, not so much. Because for Leeds Bradford and for Teesside control area and control zone, I've already made the navigational decisions way earlier on, so I never butt up against them. With Feldham and Bellaby here, it's so easy to butt up against them because they're so big in your field of view, in your cone of cross country that you can fly down from Windbank or wherever you're going from.
Yeah, I think with modelling with like something like XC track, if you've got a good sized screen, you can figure it out as you go along, even if you didn't know the airspace. If I fly down south, I don't really know the airspace that well, but I will still study it the night before. Because quite often it's just confusing, because you might go from 5 grand down to 4.5, down to 4, and when you zoom in, it's not that obvious sometimes. It takes a lot of concentration to figure it out as you go along.
You don't want to be doing that in the air.
You don't want to be doing that in the air, ideally. Yeah.
Did you have goals on those, or you just?
No, I don't think we were flying goals much in those days.
Because the beauty of a goal is you plan your track to avoid the airspace, and if you stay on heading, you pretty much avoid the
You
airspace.
can't really do that a lot of the time. I think on the
No,
bigger
not all.
goals,
I mean that flight from Dodd or wherever down to here. That's a classic route that any Dales pilot will want to fly, and you should always be aware on that one that this is the point you want to be, to the left of, or, to the east. So.
It's the windmills, isn't it?
So yeah, you can basically Grimworth Reservoir is on track for that line. So you just want to be careful. Like if you end up straying to here, you're screwed pretty much, unless it's really light wind, because you don't want to end up like there, because there's obviously nowhere to go.
Yeah.
So quite often we'll take crosswind glides when we're up here, if we think there's a lot of north in it.
Yeah.
So that you're getting out of the line. So there's a bit of forward thinking to do for that kind of thing. And that one looks a bit meandering. I'm not quite sure what's going on there.
Yeah. Certainly with Leeds Bradford control area, keep Menwith Hill on your right, and you're in the clear to get round it. But end up in this area, it can be a little bit busy, can't it, Chris?
Which area was that?
What? On the edge of airspace.
What?
I've flown over many field before.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it's interesting. There's because of the need to avoid Leeds Bradford control
No, my air
zone on the ground.
Yeah, no, that was at Skips in my airport.
Yeah, you do find quite a bit of general aviation going around the north end there. As Chris found out.
Yeah.
I once had a Battle of Britain Memorial flight pass under me at that north end.
Did you salute?
We had a single red arrow the other day on the side, and he came past and he left a trail of smoke as he went past.
Oh, sweet. Did you phone in the air procs?
No, it wasn't.
Super important point I think Jake made, and it's that point where you've got extra attention when you're thermaling. You can just leave the hands, leave a small part of the brain to do it. Your raptor thermaling brain, and your big front brain can be thinking of those clouds look okay. That's not too good over there. Cool. Darwood, the laser of control.
So, Pete asked for a flight, one of your first flights where you kind of it all clicked. This was a flight where it all clicked. It was Dodfell. It was kind of tricky takeoff. Getting up to cloud base was tricky. And then there was 4 of us. It was a gaggle. It was Chris Fountain, Martin on and down, and a guy called Chris Tyson from the Legs. And we flew, it was a westerly to start with, and we flew across the Dales. We're, as you can see, we're hopping from spur to spur. When we got out into the Vale of York, the others went a bit further north. I, thinking I knew much better than everybody else, thought I'd go straight or more or less east. They managed to stay up nice and high. I did this nice sort of up and down stuff. Turns out they knew more than me. I think what you need to make the step between small flights, I think at the time this was a PB for me, certainly a UK PB. The sky was flattering that day. It was absolute dream conditions. You flew towards the cloud, you got underneath the cloud, you went up. It was just textbook. And there was a high enough cloud base, and I just managed to join the dots. And then that gives you a whole load of confidence. You've read all this stuff, you've heard about it, and you've bombed out time and time again. What's gone on? Then you get a flattering day, and it all works, and suddenly you get this sort of positive feedback. It's like, oh shit, I can do this, you know. I can fly between the clouds. I went off on my own sortie across here. Just here, I'm thermaling, and RAF leaning is just there. So I'm sitting there looking down the runway. But I got up again, and there was a convergence cloud all the way across here, and it was amazing. We ended up flying up here, got to Captain Cook's, sea breeze came in, whole new thing to me. 1 minute I'm going northeast, the next minute I'm nearly at the ground, the next minute I'm back up in a really rough thermal, and then I'm flying downwind, back and landing on top of Model Ridge. So many things happened in this flight. What I would say though is, Pete said at the beginning, it's easy to fly 100k. I think it's not easy to fly 100k, especially in the Dales. All these peaks are like 600 plus meters. So if you've got like a cloud base of 1300, 1400 meters, you've just immediately halved your working height. It's all very well coming in and straddling on a soarable face, something like that, but you're back to square one. How long did it take you to climb out and leave in the day? How hard was it? Did you leave in the first thermal? No, because you wanted to get right up to base. You're back to square one again. So you want to stay up. It's all about decision making. You want to stay up under the good clouds. If you squeeze that down with hills, it makes life really, really hard. Once you've made this transition, and I think you said about making the transition, if you made it out there, once you've got to Fremington Edge, you've got past there, if you're going north, things become a lot easier. But in the Dales, it's hard work. It's really hard work. You have to have all your, whatever you call them, foxholes, which are your interwind slopes. But you don't really want to rely on those. You want to be, it's all about your decisions. I want to be up above that, above the high ground. I don't want to be down on the slope trying to soar. I want to be on the high ground above it. That's where the thermal's actually going to go up. That's where I'm going to stay up.
It's a good point about direction that you're leaving the Dales in. And if you look here around Massam, you know, you go from top of the hills down to Massam, and that's on flatland, and you do that over that distance. Whereas from Fremington, you know, it's not until here that you're down on the flats. So it's a much easier transition going north out of the Dales than it is going east out of the Dales.
So for people who wanted it, yeah, so if you've taken off from Windbank, which is there, the first 25k of that flight is really hard, really, really technical. The hills behind, so Buckland Pike is 100 metres higher than, or 100 plus metres higher than takeoff and Windbank. You've got to go down one of these spurs, depending on what the wind is. You've got to navigate these. There's different ways of doing it, but the way I've found the most reliable is to somehow get yourself onto Fremington Edge, work your way to the northern side of Fremington Edge, and then go off, and then you know you've cleared the airspace there. Once you're on Fremington Edge and you've got a bit of height, job's good generally. You've done the hardest bit of the flight. I mean, that's not to say you won't go down, but the really hard bit of the flight is getting from here to there. All of us have bombed out there lots and lots of times.
Castle Bolton, Redmire.
That's tricky. But the old adage is the high ground always works. It looks like a scary place to walk out from, but the high ground always works, like 95% of the time. So fly over the high ground, don't be afraid to walk out, and you're more than likely to get the climb.
Yeah. So just to add to Pete's bit, low saves are
how long is that?
totally dialed in there.
It's actually landed and taken off again.
So that's that's 1300, and I don't see another time part, but it must be 4 hours or so.
That was on a IM3. That took me an awful long time, but yeah, great day.
This was the day that Pete was flying. And a few features stand out immediately. There's streeting.
That was the convergence, the east-west convergence across the Vale of York. It was amazing.
Wow. And you can see signs of convergence here, whoever you're with, you're in the wispies there. And you can see bits and bobs of wispies even in the blue between the street or the convergence line. This is looking kind of east or northeast. This is the A1 here. But again, you can see how you can't see the coast, you can't see the cities. Keeping situational awareness visually, where should I be flying, rather than having to look down at your instruments and reorientating yourself to north and I'm going northeast. You can see there's plenty of signs of sea breeze there, just in the fact that it greys out and it mists out.
Can I just point out,
Yeah.
if you ever see that situation in front of you, it should be pretty obvious what you want to do. You just want to get under that cloud street and then follow it. That's obviously where the lift is.
Conversely, between the cloud streets, because the cloud streets are flows of air that are going downwind, kind of like that. If you're between the streets, it's pretty sinking from time to time. This is kind of where it came together for me. This is actually my first 100k flight, and the first thing that clicked. This was on a north-south cup.
Milk Hill.
Pardon?
Milk Hill.
So that's Milk Hill. We're in the Pewsey Downs here near Swindon and Marlborough. There's lots of white horses and frankly some quite good breweries as well. But the hills they're not massive. I mean, they're not Dales Hills. They're bigger than Baildon, but only a little bit.
That big,
And so I was at North-South Cup. I didn't have anything else to do that day. Everybody else was going cross-country, I might as well have. It was a tricky day. There were very, very light climbs out of a very, very shallow hill. And it was going to get very, very busy. And I just said to myself, if I get the chance to go early, do it. Normally I'm quite a bit conservative. I want to see people in front of me. I want the advantage of flying with the knowledge that they've given me. And that was less so because I knew it's North-South Cup. There were about 60 pilots, most of whom were better than me. We're going to be taking off, and it was a place that you needed to get out of in the first few climbs. I was a little bit after everybody else, so I'm kind of mid-height here and low over Marlborough. I remember seeing boys and girls with little straw boater hats and things like that going to school. And it wasn't until this section here, coming up to Wantage, that I was actually flying in a gaggle with the people. I then got left behind. I think it was probably me, Jim Goldsborough, Kirsty Cameron, and at some point we all got separated here. I got low, as I often do. I think that was possibly around Abingdon. And so a couple of things that actually clicked. Even though I'm isolated from the gaggle, they're still giving me information. So the fact that they're still up and high ahead of me means that I'm going towards lift. I've just got to fly the air I'm in, make the best of it. Okay? I do get a good climb, and I spend that by speeding up to join them, and I'm rewarded by a good section of climbs here. So that's got me to 40k. I'm with the gaggle. It's the North-South Cup. There's a load of gliders that are just better than me. There's a load of pilots that are better. They all disappear over the horizon, and I didn't see them again. And I lose Jim and Kirsty. I think they landed around Oxford. But I recognised the change in the day. because the decision had already been made for me, I had nothing better to do. You know, I was flying for the north, and the day was my own, so spend it. And I recognised for this whole section between Oxford and Bletchley that it was mainly shaded in with patches of sunlight, but just slow down. And if that's the conditions that I have, that's what I've got to live with for the time being, just go on with it. And so I never get high again. But then again, you know,
You don't get low either, though.
I don't get low because I've just changed mindset that I will take anything for however long it takes. And you know, compared to some of the climbs like that, you know, my rate of climb is much shallower. You know, metre a second, I think. But just stick with it. And that was the second biggest distance of the day. Came as an absolute surprise. And it was very much that, you know, people were, I think everybody else was at that standard where you race. You know, you get up, you're on your hot shit, and you go for it. It's 2011, and I don't know, what was I flying in 2011? I might have been on an Atco Allegra.
So what you're saying is they race themselves into the ground.
Raced themselves into the ground.
You change gear and
I minced like a good one.
that works for me as well.
Was there a goal on that pre, or was it just distance?
So the goal was the coast. We were aiming for like Cromer, something like that. But it you know, that was just so optimistic. It was unbelievable. Because it just did spread out, shade in, and get very, very mincy.
Can you tell us what time you took off and what time you landed? How long was that flight?
It's 12 o'clock there.
It was 12 o'clock there, so, and I spent half an hour on the ridge, so that might be 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 3:30.
So it's your 4 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then about 10 or 12 climbs there.
Yeah, so, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-ish.
Yeah.
But just you know, where the air's buoyant, take it. And you know, I mean, it with no sun on the ground, you know, ideally with some people around you, you can make it through some big grey areas. You know, that's been done quite frequently before. North-South Cup from Merthyr Tydfil, and I was landed near Telford or something like that. But Richard Meek and myself and a group of 4 or 5 others, it had completely clouded out in the Brecon Beacons. But we all stayed together, we all minced in half a metre a second climbs, and got ourselves out of there. It's teamwork and patience, and realising that you have to change pace. So, what directions, where are you going from? And how difficult it is when you get there. So the primary direction we used to have was northwest and west northwest, out of the Dales, weather dot. Much less so in the last 5-10 years. Yeah. So what's going to happen on the way? Normally climbing out of Dodd is just a breeze. It's lovely. Weather, usually a little bit more work involved. Your issue becomes Nidderdale here. So the number of people that have gone down at the top of that lonely valley.
Yep.
So watch out for Nidderdale.
Loft House.
Get on the far side of the valley as soon as you can. If you've got the height, get on the far side of the valley. Take the climb out on sometimes some of these ridges here.
stay on
To
the
the
high
north.
ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A mistake I see people make in a lot of cases in the Dales is they'll get to a big ridge and they'll deviate to follow it, to go along it, when they're quite high. And you should just always commit to the high ground behind it, because the thermals are all going off the tops, not the ridge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I thought that-
If you're low, go for the ridge. But
If you're low, yeah,
Yeah.
but if you're like, still quite high, just commit to going onto the moors.
yeah. There's one day I've got to, within sight of Harrogate and Wetherby, and we had no business exiting the Dales at all. I think I was with Neil Plant. Remember very clearly that we were heading into blue here, and it had been absolutely beautiful flying in the Dales, light wind. We should have just headed back for an out and return. We carried on. We barely got to the outskirts of Harrogate, and it was one of those days where the Dales was actually working so well that even though we'd taken off in a westerly, and I think we'd taken off in a westerly at Weatherfell, and just gone down here, there was a little bit of wind coming into the Dales this way. So in effect, the thermic updraft of the Dales was counteracting the fact that there was a westerly wind and causing air from the Vale of York, at least low down, to come into the Dales. And you can occasionally find that on light wind days, that the Dales is the convergence itself, and the Vale of York is never really going to work for you that well, and you can be going into wind, just trying to leave the Dales, low down. Other gotchas, we got control area for Leeds Bradford, Mats's, Topcliffe. This is all basic stuff. Strenshaw and Leeds East ATZs. One interesting thing though to watch out for leaving the Dales in a northwesterly is change of wind direction, and it can be very stark in that you've got a west-north or a northwest to southeast track here, and it can just go to be a north-south wind. Just go with it so long as you're around Leeds Bradford airspace. That's extending your flight down to Nottingham. Brilliant place to be. There's a lot of freedom flying southerlies and southeasterlies from the Dales, and they're all magic, fantastic, occasionally very lonely, isolated routes. But yeah. I think Warcop is probably the primary thing to worry about. I have to say, having had quite a few flights in these directions, I've never had to panic about Warcop though. But it is the first thing that you hit on the way out.
Do you choose, when you're in your stage, you choose sites that your walk-up's going to be not going to be an issue?
So where is Walcott?
So this is Warcop here.
Okay.
But even somewhere as far east as Semawater, coming over from Semawater, generally you're south of Brough and Kirby Stephen, and that leaves you with the problem of flying down the Vale of Eden. But to be honest, if it's been working at Sema, then getting through most of the Vale of Eden is not that much of an issue. It's actually quite bumpy, so there's lots of triggers in the Vale of Eden, including at the beginning of the Vale of Eden. There's a lot of limestone pavement, which really bakes in the sun and can help you top up height as you're crossing over to Penrith. And then not necessarily a gotcha, but this whole ridge here with multiple 700-metre peaks on it and limestone edges. All of that, by the time you get there, it's in the sun and it's drawing on. So you might find yourself moving towards more of a southerly or a southwesterly onto the Highlands again, and not an issue.
At Spade Adam, often at the weekends it's open. So it's only activated at weekends by no time, so it's worth checking that.
Which was that, sorry?
So the Spade Adam, which is the big one.
Okay.
This is Spade Adam. This is Otterburn.
Okay.
Is there airspace around Carlisle?
Not anymore.
It used to be.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I mean, Carlisle, I don't know if it's used as a runway, but previously it has been, and it had a couple of ILS glide slopes going east-west into it.
So until about 2 years ago, it used to have a ATZ liner.
That's what I remember.
So last year I flew round it because my
It's without a doubt.
quite hard.
Good to do it.
Yeah.
Richard said, "Why are you doing that?"
Much less of an issue, or sorry, much more of an issue than Carlisle
Sea breeze.
International Airport is the Solway Sea Breeze,
Okay.
and I mean, so Sea Breeze is definitely, if you low down, that's going to catch you, and if it's a light southerly, then because of the southern uplands here and because of the North Pennines here, don't forget, there's high up places around here like Kielder and the southern uplands get big, up to 800 metres. So they draw in quite a bit of air. So there could be quite a strong westerly coming up the Solway Firth there. I've been caught in it once, and there was no way I was getting out of that sea breeze. And as soon as I contacted it, I was just on a cross-wind crab and landing, somewhere near a reasonable road. Joe, I know you've had an experience. Was that actually in the sea breeze, or did you just?
I don't really know. I just bombed it. I think I just ran out of climbiness.
Yeah. And then a few little critters came and attached themselves onto you.
Well, I landed just not in Scotland, so I decided to walk into Scotland.
You have your passport with you. Anything on that northeast route or north route?
So this north route, I've done it a couple of times. It's it's magic.
It's the high ground, isn't it?
This is you get to the 66, and then all of this is like the Dales, but it's a bit more lonely.
Is that from Stags?
So this could be going from Stags. So yeah, I've gone from both Stags, and there's that little fold. So as you turn right from takeoff on Windbank, there's a little fold where it just faces a little bit more south, and that often has a little bit of climb going out of it when the wind's off to the south at Windbank. And I think 4 or 5 of us came out of that from Windbank and crossed up. I got left behind, and I think by Hexham I was managing to catch up with you and Chris Fountain.
Oh yeah.
Because obviously the cycles and the climbs had just worked for me, and I've been able to climb a bit more strongly and catch up for Hexham. I'd say, watch here, because that is the east-west approach into Newcastle. So, we had the privilege of waving at an EasyJet.
We did, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
Which was actually below us.
As the EasyJet was just coming into Newcastle. And then, here it gets a bit lonely. I landed at Winter's Gibbet. I think you were Anik, weren't you? Brilliant flight. But this is a very long potential distance out of the Dales.
Also a seldom flown route.
Seldom flown, yeah. I mean, there's 200k maybe in that before you hit Edinburgh.
I think it's, Dunbar is the...
Yeah. I know John Jellison, Sonic.
Yeah, he landed in.
He managed Berwick on Tweed, didn't he?
Yeah.
Near there.
Oh,
You can
Spent
also-
the night in a B&B in Berwick.
We can also turn left and go through that gap, which I've always wanted to do but never done.
Yeah. That'd be huge. I
That
mean,
would be
that
amazing.
you're heading up to Tinto that
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
and you know, Glasgow and Edinburgh would get you eventually,
Eventually, yeah.
but you've got 200 in the bag by then.
What did you say about Spain, Chris? It's only owned by no time at
At
weekends.
weekends, you
Right,
check the no
okay.
times.
So it's open. It's closed during the working week, but it might be open at the weekend.
It might be open at the weekend, and also check which of the areas no times, because there's three. There's A, B and C, and C is the little one in the middle, and often it's only C that'll be closed at the weekend, so you can go right through stay there at the weekend. Often, but you have to check the no times.
Yeah, that's on the Gov UK website. They do publish them for the for walkers mainly, I think. And then there's a solid southwesterly. So we just lived off southwesterlies for the last few years. Obviously, brilliant site is Wimbank, Hawkswick. Your issues are Feldham and Bellaby, correct beforehand. You've got a lot of CTA activity around here, you know, so sometimes you find yourself around Durham, you're flying under the 6.5 or flight level 5.5. And then once you're up here, you've got the sea breeze coming in, can get quite rough, and you've got a thread under here. It goes eventually down to about 3,000. I should say these blue lines, each one of those I've calibrated to 100k. So these blue lines, you know, you can just fit it in by the time you're picking out a playing field in Washington.
Yeah, Ali Guthrie landed in the housing estate, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
In a,
Does that go beyond the sea line, like into South Shields?
yeah,
It does. You can't land at South Shields.
you can.
You can
Technically, you can.
Yes.
It's a bit,
On
bit
the
crazy,
leads.
really.
Because that's a big landing area. Well, it's a big field, a big plane go off a cliff edge.
You've got to
Yeah.
cross the river to get 100k on that one.
No, but that'll be North Shields.
You've got to cross the river.
I know, I measured
To
it.
get
Landing
100k.
time, man.
Yeah.
Your landing time.
No, the weir, the one below the weir.
Oh, Sunderland.
Sunderland.
Oh, you got, yeah,
So
for
you,
sure,
you come
yes.
out and you land in Whitley Bay or something like that.
South Shields.
But
I
this,
mean, I've looked at it loads of times.
It's
I've
not, it's
done
not, it's not like
Pete,
it.
that's
Just landed
Whitney
95k
Bee.
and you say,
Yeah, Sandlands.
Dave did it a couple of years ago, but it involves a good cruise under the 3,500 feet.
Yeah.
And at the end to get 100k.
Yeah.
But it's awesome. I mean, as you said earlier, it's a number. It's an awesome flight to land somewhere on the Sunderland coast there. We've done that a few times. It's
Yeah.
brilliant. And then
Nice
through
one.
100k, you've done like 90k, and you land on the coast. What's better than landing on the coast in the Dales?
but this goes back to Pete's original point, which is it's only a number.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about turn points, have we? You know, if
So-
you want to do 100k,
Doesn't count mine.
well, it's only a number.
So you can also just about fit in 100 if you go straight to the coast. I mean, if you wiggle around to go south of Max's through turn points, you've definitely got 100 in there.
Is that Robin Hood's Bay then? And like
So you got
Scarborough?
Robin Hood's Bay, you know, Whitby's there. As you go up here, you've got Saltburn, Skinning Grove, classic place to land, Skinning Grove.
Whitby's exactly 100.
Yeah.
Isn't it, Joe? We
I got 100.0.
Point zero.
So sure you fly on the sea and then fly back again. Oh shit, I can't make it.
So gotchas for this direction, Vale of York, we've been through that. Dales convergence, you know, is it just working better in the Dales? Leeming, Topcliffe, Bagby, Matses, all the combined Matses here, you've got to work your way around.
So there's not many options to get 100k then?
Oh, there's
It's-
lots of options. We don't have the conditions very often, and we have the terrain against us.
there's always a little bit of threading around something or other, and there's always a change in landscape. From here, you've got dales, flatland, back to the hills again, but they're different hills than the dales. They're a lot tighter spaced. And then you've got sea breeze coming in around here, which
It would be
is
easier to do your 100k further down south.
That's what I was getting at.
There's a big key from doing it from
Like, I was
there.
just looking there, if you started up at like beyond Keswick and then came back to the Dales, if it was a northeasterly, surely it's easier to go from that way down.
Northwest, yeah.
Yeah, northwesterly, sorry, yeah.
As a
you're anticipating things.
Yeah, but that's where they're done actually, because it's quite hard to get away from the lakes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting, yeah.
Just to give you an idea how this all sort of, we're looking from, the Dales is kind of here.
Oh, yeah.
This is Wensleydale heading east towards the North Sea coast here. I think we're just flying down the valley from Weatherfell. But,
That's Leeming then, is it? That Leeming map?
this is Leeming, and, how do you avoid the whole Leeming thing with Teesside? So you've got to fly through it at some point. You can, but
Legally.
don't hang about. Be aware that you're in somebody else's way, and it might come off a little bit worse for you. But much better that you're not heading this way, like you've come off Penn Hill, and you're heading for the middle of it with an ATZ in there. At least we're just going across the thin bit of the panhandle.
Yeah, I've done exactly that.
And you can see here how Bellaby and Feldham ranges here. This is rifle, this is tank artillery, I think. And then you're flying under this big slab of airspace that comes down into Teesside. And then this big slab of airspace here that comes down, that's a CTA that steps down into Newcastle airspace. And already, you've got Teesside in the way there. So it's crowded when you look at it in one way, and it pays to bear in mind that you've got to make your corrections or approach it with the right trajectory to minimise your exposure to the airspace. Okay, some of this airspace might not be airspace, it might be ground space. So, as well as Bellaby, we were just looking at Bellaby. This is Bellaby here. So this is something called a military dry training area, hiding behind Bellaby. You can fly over this until the cows come home.
Is the dry training area the moorland that is just open tracks everywhere next to catching cows?
But there's mixed woodland as well.
Yeah.
And then there's some sheds in it as well.
Yeah.
And there's tanks driving around.
Yeah,
isn't
tanks
there?
driving
Yeah.
But equally, people walk their dogs on it.
Yeah.
But all of the signs for this being closed, as in don't walk across here, are on the ground.
So you can fly over that.
You can fly over it. 500-foot rule applies, blah, 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 unless you're landing.
Which we always
But
are.
you don't know if it's active as you're flying over it, because the signs are put up around the footpaths and the roads. So just be aware.
But no, hang on, this came to light.
Yeah.
That is not marked on a chart, an air chart,
No.
which we fly with. But what caught everybody out was it's marked on XC track
Yes.
on your app.
Yeah.
So can we fly through it or can't we? Yes, you can. So you're not allowed to fly anywhere through that circle, but look at the roads.
Yeah.
And it's rangers, and I know they're near that road that goes northwest, southeast, and they're all firing off to the northeast. Yeah.
But if you plan early enough, then you can end up on Flemington, which is to the north.
Yeah, no,
West of
absolutely. No, I'm not saying fly through it, but it's just
Well, that's big
it's
box
just a circle of a radius that encompasses everything that needs to be encompassed. It's like, and like NOTAMs are the same. They have to, how do you describe a NOTAM that is something quite complicated? I'll just put a Latin law on it and a certain radius. It's an approximation.
Okay. as you rightly pointed out, 100 k's from the Dales can be a bit problematic from time to time. So there might be some better alternatives. Barton Fell certainly has legs to it. It's not done so often because, you know, flying out of the lakes and into the Dales requires good consistency of conditions. You know, as you're exiting the lakes, you've got Vale of Eden sea breeze, you've got sea breezes coming up from Morecambe Bay that might cut you off. Equally, you might have the brilliant Vale of Eden convergence that sets up sometimes in a westerly. And then you've got to have the ability to fly out into the Vale of York as well. But that's perfectly possible. It's been done a few times. Harlech. So 100k from Harlech, you only need to get to the bottom of the North Yorks Moors. So you don't need to worry about sea breeze. Well, maybe you do at Harlech.
Yeah.
So you've got to get away from Harlech before the sea breeze comes in, or as the sea breeze comes in and it sort of hoovers the air up and you get out of dodge.
Harlech out of the Manchester airspace.
Oh, very yes, yeah. So Harlech is one of the less worrying aspects as regards airspace, because if there's any sort of south in it, you miss Leeds Bradford airspace, and you just go through very gently through the south end of the Dales, and I'm talking without personal facts here. I'm in a fact-free zone because I just flew my longest flight from Harlech on Saturday at 15.6 kilometres.
Hey.
Turnpoint distance, is that right?
Pardon?
Is that turnpoint distance?
Yeah. and I'd been out front more than a kilometre as well. But that's something Richard Meek's done. Jake, I think you've done it once or twice.
My first 100k was from Harlech in that direction, and landed near Osmond. It was on a 2-star day as well. It was a day that didn't look good.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm really surprised. I don't see that.
Harlech in a southerly as well. I mean, we've tried to take. I mean, would you believe we tried to take a British Club challenge there to Harlech in a southerly?
You've got like 50 metres, 25 metres of soaring.
Yeah, it's an accident wait to
No accidents happened that time. But Harlech in the southerly, you know, you're all the way up into the Vale of York.
Don't bother, go to another site.
Yeah.
It's a sadly.
Go to Notts.
Nonce is covered in airspace in
Yeah.
cross country. It's, but it has been done. So Nick Cronshaw's your man there. But of course, probably one of the easier ones is the northerly at Model Carlton Bank. So Carlton Bank, you know, is a northwest face, but Model is a northerly. So you're straight down, you know, generally east of Leeds, Bradford. Model will take a bit of east in it, so you can find yourself fighting Leeds Bradford airspace. But when I've left Model, you know, I've landed at places like Chesterfield before that.
But that's an easier one because of the air mass as well, isn't it?
Yeah, take it on advisement. Some public money is being wasted as we speak by Doncaster City Council in reopening Robin Hood's airport and therefore the airspace around it. It was always passable, but sometimes, you know, you're very constrained if you're having to fly at 4,000 or 3,500 feet north of Doncaster. The final tool is the 10 to 100 group.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a group. It's, you know, a loose place to go learn. We'll run sessions, but also, you know, pitch in with what you think your goal for the day should be. You know, quite often after cross countries, we'll do a post-flight analysis. If the arrangements are working out, then we'll go out post where Joe, myself are going. If it's looking like there's time before conditions develop, we'll set a task. We'll talk about how to do that task. One of the things we're also thinking of is a bit of a breakfast briefing.
It's great to write a forum post. It's good to write somewhere. X Contest lets you write. Does the XC League let you write a little log as well?
Yeah, XC League, you can just put text in, no pictures.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. But I mean, the forum's good because it's a bit more fully featured as a text thing.
It'd be nice to have some company, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but it's great. So you know, when Pete asked us to do this thing, I can look back on all my flights, all my significant flights. I've done a bit of a write-up, and as you're thinking back and looking at what you did, it's a great part of the learning thing because you revisit what you did and write it down, think about what you did wrong and stuff like that. And it's good for other people as well, and other people can then point out. You might mention something, and like Chris, you said to me, you know, on some of my stuff, you pointed out things that have happened and stuff, and yeah, if more people could do it, it would be great.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to talk.
What
What will be a more
maths
pleasurable, more maths next time.
Yeah.
What would be more pleasurable is if we can fly this damn stuff.
Soon.
So cheers.
Thank you very much.